Thank you all. This is kind of hard, partly because I don't have any slides. I don't know what I'm going to say much because I guess I thought I would try and respond to the first 2 days. Of course, there is another day. Let me say, but then I'll be history. This is that's the future. So, and I'm the past. So, I thought. So today was officially billed as sort of more about Egenis. So I'll say just something about Egenis, and then I'll just have a few comments on some things I've heard. I just, want to say, it's difficult to say how much I've enjoyed these 2 days because it sounds a bit self-congratulatory. but I have, so I'll just take the opportunity to be a bit self-congratulatory. It's been quite wonderful. I mean, the talks have been brilliant, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Yeah, so thank you all for coming. So again, self-congratulations. I mean, a lot of people have said Egenis has been a successful project. I can't look at this room without saying, yes, it's been really successful. I mean, just about nearly everybody here has had some ongoing connection. And just to look at all these wonderful scholars, friends, colleagues, all of the aboves who have been involved in it, I can't deny it. It's been, it's been a wonderful experience. Of course, as people have something to make clear, I did not build Egenis. I played a role in it, but I say, as we've heard, there were 3 directors that we collaborated on this, and then there have been all of you who have all come and engaged with it. So we've heard Alan actually gave some lovely comments about what makes this sort of operation work. So I'll say something slightly different, and since I'm I'll say a little bit about my what I take to be the job of a director of a centre, and please take notes. And obviously, the most important job is finding smart, interesting, creative people and getting them to come and join your project. And I have to say again, I mean, I and my other colleagues have been absolutely brilliant at that. I just look around the room and I, so that's what really makes it work. So what after that? You just try and create the conditions in which those people can do what they're good at, what they want to do. And that's really very easy. You just tell them, do what you want to do. It's great. And, sometimes, you think maybe he could do this rather than that. Gently nudge a little bit, but mostly my management style is to say, you're great, do what you want to do, and something good will happen. And people get in the habit of saying, oh, well, why don't we have a conference? Yes, go and organize it. I mean, the other part of it, I suppose, is preventing the things that stop that happening, which is generally dealing with the sort of downward flow of stuff from on high, which is usually, let's say, sometimes unhelpful. And that mostly what I see that job as is constructing narratives for administrators, funders, and so on, which tell them that you're doing exactly what they think you're doing and what they want you to do. And that's, that's kind of interesting, creative task. Because the last thing I want to do is say, well, it says here in the grant proposal that you're supposed to be doing that, so you can't do what you're doing, you've got to do that. I try never to say that to anybody. I just say, you do that, and I will, when I have to, I'll say why you're doing that was really what we meant all along. Anyhow, if it wasn't, it's obviously much better than achieving the goal, and so on. So it's a simple job, but it's kind of fun sometimes. And well, I guess it seems to work. So that's really all I wanted to say about Egenis, except again, thank you all for making it happen and do wonderful things. So I'm going to just go say something about all these wonderful talks. And again, I try to have you all understand that, I'm English and I'm very uncomfortable with anything that might look at all self-congratulatory, but there's no way I can quite avoid it. So to start off, I said, wonderful first talk, but if I say that, I say, because all the things you said were true. So, but I couldn't possibly say that. But no, it was just fantastic. I don't know if I've ever thought of myself particularly as an iconoclast, but I think I accept that actually that is probably what we should be doing as philosophers mostly. I mean, that's looking at the assumptions underlying things that are common sense to most people. Yeah. So I think I buy that, and I think that's mostly what I've been trying to do. So one thing I guess that runs through yesterday particularly was learning about what I've been doing. I mean, this is wonderful. How could one not enjoy it? I think sometimes I guess iconoclasm sounds a bit difficult and a bit, questionable, so maybe critique, criticism, all kinds of rather more familiar things. But I guess the other thing and I guess that was, I think, clear in Hass's talk, of course, the nice thing about iconoclasm is you have to choose what to be iconoclastic about, which means that you're always deciding what's important, what matters. And I do think, and some people were kind enough to say this, that, or at least imply it or say things I could interpret that way, that a lot of the philosophy I've done has been because I think it might do a little bit of good. I mean, that's not, that's always a bit optimistic when you try. So, you try to be iconoclastic about things that you think we might be better off without so much of, and try not to be, I'm not going to lay into socialized medicine, say. I mean, wouldn't it be a great idea? So thanks for all that. And actually that leads quite nicely into Nancy's talk, because it was very kind of Nancy to sort of suggest that she's working out a sentence of mine in a paper that very few people probably have ever read, but I'll take it. But I guess it actually, it occurred to me that when Philip was distinguishing early John from late John, which I'll come back to, there's a sort of mid John, which didn't come up much in the discussion, so obviously we don't want any part of my opus to be overlooked. I will just mention, which is, I suppose, that after the disorder of things, I at least as I reconstruct my life, I sort of had this, I don't think it was quite, I thought I solved all the problems of philosophy and needed to move on. But I wanted to do something different, and I had the idea that what really philosophers of science should be doing was sort of intellectual hygiene. I had Philip's great example of his sociobiology book there, which I've always admired. So I kind of started thinking, well, now, I've got this idea of how there are so many ways of thinking about the world, dividing it up and doing science. Some of them are probably awful. And in fact, it's not hard to find, particularly, I mean, and one I looked at was, it's not hard to see sometimes, with respect to my wonderful friends who are economists. Nonetheless, at least back then, it did sometimes seem as if economists were coming up with a lot of theories about things that, let's say, might have been doing more harm than good. And at least if they weren't, they seemed to be rather poorly grounded in anything I recognized as a good way of getting at the truth. So I wrote a few papers about economics, saying slightly rude things, and that's what Nancy picked up. And then, of course, following directly from Philip's example, I picked up on the next wave of people saying we're all biologically determined to do awful things that some people thought we should perhaps stop doing. So did stuff on evolutionary psychology. The economics didn't last very long at all, and mostly, to be honest, because I found it so boring to read. That's, you know, I'm sure there's a terribly interesting bit, but I didn't somehow find them. But so anyway, but seriously, I think, you know, it is an important job for philosophers to be iconoclastic and to at least be quite critical of some of the things that are done in the name of science. And of course, one of the points of emphasizing the disunity of science is scientists couldn't, scientists meaning some office in the science faculty, was not a sufficient grounds for saying we should believe what you say, because, you know, it wasn't all one project that stood or fell together. So then there was Jonathan's lovely paper on free will and human behavior genetics, which he knows a lot more about than I do, but which is definitely something I've been interested in, like I said, for a long time. Keeps coming back in my interest. And I guess, again, I suppose because I at least try and tell myself that doing philosophy could do a little bit of good. And actually, you know, there's sort of two phases to the kind of deterministic theories of human behavior issue. One is, you know, criticizing theories like behavioral genetics that are often presented as deterministic theories of human behavior. But then the other is actually, it's quite nice to suggest that people have some ability to change the world in desirable ways. And I think it's pretty obvious that we do, but there's a philosophical doctrine that we don't. So this seems like the sort of thing that's at least worth thinking about. And the philosophical doctrine is often based in ideas about science that, of course, I had completely rejected, the sort of deterministic worldview. And of course, then, you know, as Jonathan made this clear, it's not that simple. I mean, it isn't just that you get rid of determinism and then we can all be, we're all free. But I think, you know, I think there is a way in which the largely chaotic universe that I envisage us living in, I think we live in, I think does make sense of the ability of humans to actually make the changes they want in the world. The tragedy being that we so often don't. So again, that's, and Jonathan laid out in a very generous and charitable way exactly what I think about this. So I won't say it again. Thank you for doing that. Just one thing I thought of, there was some discussion at the end about free will and non-humans. Actually, I think I much prefer to talk more generally about agency. I think lots of animals have what I would like to call agency. I think they change the world, but I don't think they change. I think what is interesting about free will, which is sometimes described pretentiously as slightly Kantian, I think that what's special about humans is that we change the world with a vision over a longer time frame. We have plans, we have big collaborative plans to build bridges, make hospitals, learn Chinese. You know, I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can actually. And I do think probably most animals respond to the present moment in a not very reflective way. I mean, it may be that there are some other very intelligent animals that have big cooperative plans. That'd be great, but I think that's a rarity, and I think free will is better thought of in that way, and agency as the broader thing out of which it developed. Human nature. now that, I mean, here's another case where Tim evidently knows my work better than I do. So he read all the stuff I did on that, and he certainly told me some things about what I think. And I mean, I totally buy it. So I'm completely persuaded by all so that was lovely. See, what was I going to say? I'm going to say something about that. Oh yeah. No, the thing that I think is absolutely right, and I certainly would not have said before, was the dithering. Absolutely, I think it's very unclear whether one should be an eliminative, as in say, human nature just is a harmful concept we could do without, or on the other hand, it's so obviously, and again, you know, as people said in a couple of discussions, I mean, you know, we do think there are people who are good at understanding human nature. We think, you know, the great novelists have written wonderfully illuminating things. And actually, the solution to this, I think, comes in Paul's talk today. We should think about human nature the way he says we should think about sex. It's, you know, humans have all these dispositions, but they're not dispositions for all humans everywhere. They are tendencies such that if you describe the very complex set of circumstances in which people live, you can often say, yeah, humans would generally do this in that circumstance. There's no generalizations. All humans always do this. That's what the bad notion of human nature tends to give us. But I think that a localized notion, this is sort of the way people generally behave in those sort of circumstances, is what we're really talking about when we talk about somebody as understanding human nature. So thank you for showing me my problem, and Paul, thank you for solving my problem. Yeah,
those problems can be solved with sex, I find.
Word comments. So Adrian, gosh, there again, Adrian? Oh, hi, Adrian. I really enjoyed that your talk. Now you, I think, have not quite convinced me that I believe what you say I believe, and I think that's because I don't quite understand it. I you know, and as I said to you, I mean, I love to have, this is one of my favorite passages in that book, which I still quite like, and I'd love to hear it read out by someone, but I'm not quite sure that I thought I was saying that, but maybe I was, but at any rate, I think that's, I tend to take it with this powerful intuition. But the trouble is, I suppose, where I think I'm not quite sold is on the kind of metaphysics you think I should be doing. And this gets getting interesting, because I think I'm sort of criticized for my conception of metaphysics, both from the left and from the right. I won't say who's left and who's right, but I mean, from two sides anyway. And so maybe I'll move straight onto there now, because I think, well, no, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just put that on the side and finish off with this will come shortly to Philip's unhappiness with my idea of metaphysics. But no, so first let me say, Katie, I was so pleased to see you doing this work on soil. As you know, it's a favorite concept, and you're obviously getting some really interesting ideas about it, which I was delighted to hear. As I said to you earlier, the only thing about this is I have a slight discomfort The discomfort being that I think I've told you several times and other people that I was going to do some work on soil, because soil seems to me a wonderful example of a process. I mean, people, still sometimes think it's a stuff that you stick plants in so they stand up, and then you pour chemicals in so they grow. And you can sort of do that for about 50 years, and then it's a desert. So it's not a good idea to treat agriculture that way. And what we need to understand is how to stabilize the process in a sort of optimal way for growing lots of plants in it. And I think the sort of work we're doing is helping us perhaps to head that way. And perhaps I'll even say publicly, somehow I was persuaded to say I would try and write something about this for the soil, but I have told people I would for a long time, and it's something I really would love to do. So I'll try. Scott, very little I can say, because you talk about the symbiosis with the obvious authority of somebody who knows exactly what he's talking about, and it's all true. It's all important, and I just say thank you for associating me with this work. And I guess I may say it again. Thomas had a very true story about how all this, and it is a body of work the work that I did with Maureen, who just needs to be given full billing, at least with this, is exactly as Thomas represented it. I had some sort of philosophical ideas, and Maureen appeared like Deus ex machina with this vast body of knowledge imported from not far away forward, quite far, I suppose. But and it just was a symbiosis that I think led to some work that I'm very happy with. So so that was all very nice, but I can only say, yeah, I just agree with it. All sounded true and right. So Philip, that was a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed it, and I know that this is a sort of response to some of my work now that is not unique to you, and I know some of my closest friends said yes when we sort of. So so here's the thing. I think here's the process. Sorry. I think that you think I shouldn't be a realist, and I think I should be a realist. Actually, I think I should be a realist for pretty much the reason. I remember who said it. Was it Tim? Did you say something about it?
It was me.
Yes, I thought so. Yes,
I don't know what you're about to say, but
oh, then it was
the fact that it sounds like it's going to be positive.
Well, there was something about common sense, ordinary language, yes. And of course, I was, I was educated in Oxford in the sort of late 60s, when it was still swarming with ordinary language philosophers on every corner. And I kind of, I never go around now saying I'm an ordinary language philosopher, but there's some good things there. And actually, one of my favorite things is Austin on reality. Austin basically says real is not, as one would never say now, a trousers word. The unreal wears the trousers. So I'm just quoting. It's just but I don't actually. I just think that it's just common sense. Things, processes, just out there. You're real. I'm real. Now, what that means, what we are, those are the sort of questions that we're interested in as philosophers or scientists. But that we're real seems to be just a question I'm not terribly interested in. But now Now, so the point being, and this is, I guess, is where I want to hope to come to stabilize a position between you and Adrian, is I think I'm doing perfectly naturalistic metaphysics. I think what I'm talking about is a very general statement of what is the best description of our scientific worldview. And sometimes, you know, I will tell a longer story. You know, we believe now that the universe started as complete chaos. I mean, unimaginably chaotic, and then 10 to the minus 6 seconds or something, momentary entities stabilized for 10 to the minus something seconds. And, you know, then gradually over millions of years, stars appeared and planets appeared, little stabilities appeared in the chaos. And after a few billion years, the wonderful processes we think of evolution appeared. What is this? It's a story of a chaos out of which these forms have emerged. Now, why the chaos was of such a kind that forms emerged from it, I guess, is a question that maybe leads us to the theologians or something. But at any rate, that's a question I'm happy to say is the point at which I want to say that's, as Paul said, it just is what it is. And that's how it is. The point about this, why I think early John and late John are absolutely the same process, is that the way I see it is early John was presented this description of a world multiply fissured and seamed, which we could think about in many different ways. It's not that the fissures aren't there, it's that there are just so many of them, we can choose the ones we need. And I just thought, it is what it is. What I came to think in later John was actually, there's a picture of what science is telling us that I just laid out, that actually makes this the kind of world you'd expect. If you think of the world as all this flow out of which sometimes for various periods of time forms stabilize, and they stabilize in relation to other kind of processes that are going on around them. You know, as we've heard from several people, for example, I mean, the symbiosis is everywhere. Forms, biological forms, stabilize in relation to lots and lots of other forms. And all of this is of a piece with the sort of world one would satisfy this general description of being a world in which everything flows chaotically about, but somehow has the capacity to emerge into these forms. It's not a kind of, you know, thesis about the nominal world, or sorry. I'm afraid I'm a dyed-in-the-wool naturalistic metaphysician, and I think ultimately the grounds for my naturalistic metaphysical beliefs are empirical. That's, I'm afraid, where I am. But I don't see it as something that should have Philippine problems either. I don't. So, okay. So that was. I was sort of thinking that it takes me too long to process for me to even be able to try and respond to today's wonderful talks. I mean, they just carried on, and maybe I won't. Maybe I will come to an end, but I will just actually end because my head is sort of full and keeps overflowing. But the last thing in was Jim's talk. So I'll just make one little comment about this. It was really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. And it led me to recall something I probably shouldn't publicly announce, but I will, obviously. Jim and I had a kind of habit of meeting up at various conferences in the sort of 80s and early 90s. And we had this project that we would talk about over a few drinks. And the project was we wanted to edit an anthology of interesting papers in the philosophy of biology. Now, we actually found this quite hard. I'm not sure, I mean, we must have come up with a few examples, and I'm sure there were, you know, this was part lighthearted, and I'm sure there were other examples we would have. But the reason I tell this story is I look around this room now, and I see so many people who are writing interesting papers. We could not possibly edit. This would be a series with a volume coming out every month. Because there's just so much interesting philosophy of biology. I certainly don't want to claim that Egenis is the sole source of that, and many people here who would rightly be offended if I did, but to be part of that, to be part of this process by which now philosophy of biology has bloomed into this source of so much interesting work, is a great pleasure. I think maybe I would say perhaps that the story that Dan was telling us about the sort of explosion of philosophy of biology beyond the narrow confines of the evolutionary has been part of that story. But at any rate, it's been wonderful to be part of it. Tomorrow, it's all over. But I just want to say it's been such a pleasure, and particularly it's because the whole, atmosphere of this meeting has seemed to me wonderful. It's really been communal, collegial, and just, many of my favorite people and philosophers all sitting in the room, some of them saying nice things about me. What more could you possibly want? So thank you all, and I think you've got a little time if you want to ask me any questions.